We got Big 12 up first, Kansas State and TCU. We're seeing the Horned Frogs minus 2.5 at most sports books. Actually, just saw the Westgate in Las Vegas click down to minus 1.5. So maybe some Kansas State money here. Robbie, can start off with you. 62 being the total. AT&T Stadium, Dallas, Texas, I believe. Season win total of 6. That was TCU, 6.5. Well, they well surpassed that. Top 4 now in the rankings, trying to kind of punch their playoff ticket here with a win. Can Kansas State kind of rebound from that loss? 38-28 earlier in the season? Catching 2.5 here, Robbie. What do you like in the Big 12 championship game?
Well, let's say first, Drew, that this is one of two we're going to talk about where the favorite is really, really close to home. In this game, AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, probably a 30-minute ride from Fort Worth. I checked the ticket allotment for each team here. Both of these teams is given 7,000 tickets by the Big 12. But there's 80,000 seats in the stadium, so 14,000 tickets given away to universities to get their people in, and then 66,000 seats left that'll probably be crowded by TCU purple, not as much Kansas State purple. So you have to I had to go back in my power ratings and not actually power rate it as a true neutral site game, but as like half of a TCU home game here. I come up with TCU -3 favorite here. You just said that we saw a drop down to 1.5. That's just from the crowd aspect right there. Just want to let people know. We'll talk about Georgia later as well. Regular season, Drew, you mentioned it, 38-28. Interesting game because in that particular game, Adrian Martinez had been the starting quarterback for KState all along. Will Howard had not seen any game action whatsoever yet. In fact, didn't take a practice rep all week long before that game. Martinez goes down, and in the first half, Will Howard leads the team to 4 touchdowns consecutively. In the second half, he gets hurt, misses a couple of series, plays 3 out of 5 series. But TCU kind of figures things out and shuts K-State down scoring-wise. Now, shutting them down might be a little harsh to say because Kansas State did miss 2 crucial field goals in the second half of that game, a 40 and a 44-yarder. So point being here, TCU probably was not ready for Will Howard and what he brought to the table, and they got stung by it. They went into the locker room. DC Joseph Gillespie made a few adjustments. They played a little bit better, and they made the comeback in that game. When you look at this, Drew, since he's been the quarterback, Will Howard, and the difference is significant between, at least statistically, between what he's done and what Adrian Martinez has done. Kansas State, with Will Howard at quarterback, has allowed only 1 sack every 30 pass attempts. In the TCU game, they didn't allow any the first time around. With Adrian Martinez at quarterback, they had allowed 1 sack every 14.3. So, about twice as many sacks with Martinez as with Will Howard. Sees the field better, gets rid of it quicker, just a different style quarterback. With Will Howard, I think the biggest difference of all, 264 passing yards per game. With Adrian Martinez, only 159. Kansas State's a real threat of explosive offense right now, and I kind of feel like they can keep up with TCU. I was with Ralph on another show yesterday, College Football Today show with Dave Koken as well, and we talked a little bit about second time around, can teams make adjustments? I feel like both of these teams can make adjustments in this case. TCU probably now having seen Will Howard. Whether or not they can stop it or not, guys, another question. But I'm saying that they can make a few tweaks. They probably did in the second half the first time around. And Kansas State, let me just go through, talking about adjustments. I'm going to read you a couple of quotes here. Now, mind you guys that what I'm going to read to you here real quickly comes on the heels in the same article, which leads off by saying Kansas State will not provide any, or is trying their best to not provide any bulletin board material for TCU. But then they gave the mic to defensive back Drake Cheatham, who said this: they've got a lot of talented players and they're very explosive, but we gave them some freebies. We know we're going to fix those this week before we go down there and play them again. A rematch is better for us. We're definitely not going to do the same thing as we did last time. I'm not sure if they want to see us again. that sounds like pretty good bulletin board material to me. It also sounds like K-State's got some adjustments in hand here for Max Dugan and company. I think bottom line here, guys, Kansas State and TCU, to me, look like equal teams. They really do. They show much of the same explosiveness. They show much of the same balance. They show much of the same defensive weakness. I'd probably lean toward the Kansas State side if it wasn't in Fort Worth. It was in Amon Carter the first time. I get it. It was a true home game for TCU, and Kansas State played really, really well. We'll see if they can do it again in a bigger stadium. Price just isn't enough for me to get involved. The total, interestingly, in this game, first time it was only 54.5. Now it's 62. They scored 66 the first time. Can they get over here? Maybe. We'll see. But I think for the sake of the show, I would lean K-State plus the 1.5 or 2 points, whatever it is right now.
Good stuff, Robbie, to start it off here. Ralph, coming to you next. Rob brought up a lot of great points there. I was looking at this like the market is kind of telling us it should be Kansas State. Just this number, I feel, with TCU being the number 3 team in the country. But if you've been going against TCU, man, just like, oh, this is the time they're going to drop it, multiple games this season, you've lost a lot of money. I mean, this team's 12-0 straight up, 10-2 against the spread. One of the most profitable teams in the country. I know 5 of their 11 wins have just come by 1 possession. But still, it's almost like one of those things in betting, Ralph. You learn it. Just don't step in front of these money makers. You know what I mean? I don't know. What are you thinking here? Big 12 championship game, Ralph. Looks like we got Ralph with a little fire alarm.
I have the alarm people in my apartment complex, so I apologize. I'll get it in real quick because the alarm went off. I'm going to say this. Rob talked about how they're a more passing team.
We'll come back to Ralph, guys. We'll get his Coastal Carolina
it keeps going on and off. I'm going to say this quick. I'm going to say this quick. You got to remember, Rob talked about them passing for more yards, Kansas State. You got to remember, Adrian Martinez had 109 carries. So that averages to 18 carries per game. Of course, they're going to pass for many more yards behind Will Howard because they were a rush first team first. Because they're a pass first team and the way the defense is played late, I do like the over in this game. I really have no opinion on the side. You look at the stat profile, TCU is plus 74 yards per game in conference play, where Kansas State is plus 59. That gives a slight edge to TCU. But if you look at the numbers, TCU's offense is number 36, averaging 40 yards per game more than their opponents. TCU was only 33, so they're basically even. On defense, Kansas State is number 24, holding foes to 64 yards under their average. TCU's defense, although it's giving up fewer yards, the opponents they played, they're only holding those opponents to 27 yards per game under their average. So that stat profile leans TCU. I lean over.
Apologies for the fire alarm there, guys.